drunk, I'm gonna be getting laid, I'm gonna be getting my party.
I personally have had 2 friends that were killed by a drunk driver.
As long as they're not letting little kids ride out in the middle of the road, I'm fine, so.
At the end of the night, I'll probably drive.
First of all, half these motherfuckers here, 90% of them are probably gonna take the car home.
It's one of the worst experiences of my life.
Danny was thrown out of the car and she died instantly.
The legal definition of driving while intoxicated is when a person operates a motor vehicle on a public highway while intoxicated. And intoxication is legally defined as when a person no longer has the normal use of their mental or physical faculties due to the introduction of alcohol and or drugs into their body.
It's when you've taken pills, when you've had a few drinks. We talk about impairment, and because it really can be on anything. It can be on prescription pills. A lot of times people think, well, a doctor prescribed it for me, so it must be okay to get behind the wheel, and that's not the case at all.
It's not your typical violent crime, which is why I think at least that people don't look at it as being something as serious. Most of the DWI cases that we end up making, there's not a wreck, nobody's hurt, and people kind of look at it like, yeah, maybe I had a little bit too much, but, nobody's hurt. I really shouldn't go to jail for it. It's no big deal.
Have you had anything to drink tonight? Nothing at all? Nothing at all. Do me a favor, step out of the car real quick.
This is our driver. Basically, they were coming from a bar, headed home. He was traveling at a high rate of speed, lost control, went off from the freeway off onto the feeder road. And he was able to get out of the truck and got transported, but the female was actually trapped in the truck, so they had to actually get her out of the truck. Once I got here, I was able to get his information, and now all we're waiting for is for the nurse to come draw his blood as mandatory. But he will be charged with DWI tonight.
I think if people saw a lot of the things that we see on the streets at night and hear the stories and talk to the victims and talk to the families, that's what I think would really paint the picture for people about how tragic DWI can end up being.
He had no clue this would be the end, and he would bring 2 lives with him. He was just trying to have a good time, and this is how the story goes. It happens every night. He lost control, he wasn't thinking right, and there goes their lives, and there goes their lives.
every DWI arrest that we make has the potential to be one of those multiple fatality crashes, which is why it makes it that much more important for us to stop people before they get into a wreck.
With 2009 and 2010, Harris County, Texas had more than 13,000 DWI-related offenses filed. It's an incredible number, and by no means were we getting everybody. There were still a lot of drunks out on the road, but that's how many we got each year, is more than 13,000.
The people I see in court are everyday people like you and me. Anybody who drinks and drives is at risk of being arrested and convicted of driving while intoxicated.
This is not the type of person that I am. I do not, lead my life in this way, really.
Somebody who could be having a bad day at work, goes out drinking with his buddies and gets in the car not thinking about it, or the party kid from the school going to a party, getting wasted, being cool with all his friends, and on the way home he didn't want to get a driver, didn't want to ask his friend, so on his way home he gets in a wreck or he gets pulled over. I think it's anybody.
It's not something that's particular to one group. It's not always teens, it's not always adults. It's just anybody that isn't thinking and they don't have that right state of mind to just decide not to drive while they're drunk.
To tell you the truth, honestly, I'm kind of a homebody.
These guys were like literally saying that they weren't intoxicated, and you could clearly tell that they were. From their speech, the way they walked, how they couldn't stand still, like you could tell everything.
In the holding cells, you saw like all different types of people. There were people wearing suits and people wearing really nothing, pretty much. There was different, all walks of life, different races, you could tell different economical backgrounds.
I was so unaware of how many drunk people there really were, like on the roads, like driving out while we're driving, you know.
So just last night, one of the task force members had a 17-year-old that I believe was double the limit at .16 when he got his breath back. So 17 years old.
If you're not educated enough, then you're not going to know the ramifications of your actions. So anybody that isn't educated or thinks that they're bulletproof or thinks they're okay to drive, it's, you drink one drink and your mind is altered. Like, it affects you, it affects your body, it affects your reaction time. So people that think that 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, they're fine, are crazy. Like, they're not, it's not okay.
DWI happens to good people every day, no matter how old you are. I've had friends that have been arrested for DWI, people that I've been close to arrested for DWI. It doesn't make you a bad person. There's executives that get brought in, just like there's people that are almost homeless. So it doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter what kind of education you have. It doesn't matter what kind of job you have, or if you even have a job. DWI affects everybody.
I got pulled over because I did not have my lights on, and I was on the corner of Kirby and Shepherd.
Teens know inherently that what they're doing is wrong, illegal, that they're not supposed to be drinking, they're especially not supposed to be driving after they drink.
And that is when the police officer asked me to roll down the window.
You go up to the car and start talking to a teen, and it's right away, it's, oh, I haven't had anything to drink.
And just asked if I had been drinking, and I had said no.
It's real quick to us when we get up to the car, whether somebody in the car's been drinking or not.
Then he asked me to step out of the car, which I did.
So the quick, oh, I haven't had anything to drink. We can smell it as soon as the window's open, start talking to him for just a minute.
And then I was placed in the cop car and arrested and kind of went through that whole process.
blur you the fuck out. Like, seriously. That's a threat, too.
I had like one drink. No, oh my god, don't get that shit out.
You're a shitty person and that's all your grandma loves you for. Huh?
I want to be let go. I want my fucking dignity because I didn't do anything wrong.
I'm a fucking school teacher, motherfucker.
All this stuff.
I'm not intoxicated. I'm not drunk.
What kind of car do you have?
Huh?
What kind of car do you have?
BMW.
BMW? Is that what you were driving tonight?
I am a bit under the influence. I admit that. I do admit that.
You see me playing that your game? Y'all know how to.
Let me talk to my fucking mother.
I got my rights, right? You like being. I got my rights, right?
Let go of me. Let go of me. You're hurting me.
You remember what street you were driving on?
You see this? You see this, bitch? Fucking see this. There's throw up on the ground, bitch. Go away!
For most teenagers, whenever they go to parties, they don't even think about who else is on the road. All they're focused on is, oh, we're going to a party, or, oh, I have to get home. They don't even think about who else is on the road. They're only focused on themselves, and I think they need to be more aware of, who is on the road.
I think the reason for it is because even though kids will go out and do some dumb stuff, there's still curfews at home. So they might go out and they might drink somewhere or be someplace else they shouldn't be, but they're so afraid of not being home by midnight or not being home by 12:30 that they still want to be home on time.
Unfortunately, it happens a lot, and it happens because people are making poor choices. And we talk about it as a community problem, but it's an individual. It comes down to a single person making the poor decision to go out. And they're not making plans ahead of time, and then they find themselves in the situation of, how do I get home? And unfortunately, what happens, by the time you start drinking, by the time you've been drinking for several hours or whatever it is, you're not in any position to assess your own level of intoxication and whether or not you should be behind the wheel. So the trick really is for people to make that decision up front before they go out. How am I going to get home in a safe way tonight?
I think the big problem is people don't have a plan before they go out. I mean, most people know when they go out they're going to drink and they might get drunk, and I think the biggest part is just having a plan, having someone that's going to be a designated driver or someone that can pick you up, or a taxi. And I think that's where a lot of people get into trouble. They don't take responsibility and don't get someone to take care of them when they're impaired.
The common popular misconception is that's stuff that only happens to somebody else. It won't happen to me.
There's many people out there that they know about drinking and driving, and they know about doing drugs and all that kind of stuff, but unless it touches their lives or something happens to them, they don't give it any thought. I mean, they know what's going on, they just don't try to prevent it or stop it until something bad happens to them.
You're lucky if all you do is get arrested. And by lucky, I mean because we've had a lot of people that, they drink, they drive, they don't think about it, they drink, they drive, and they end up getting in an accident. They either kill themselves, they'll kill a friend of theirs, like if they've got passengers, or they end up killing or hurting somebody else.
Lots and lots of DWI cases, unfortunately. We get them all the time. Usually, probably the majority of the time, they hurt themselves. But there's a pretty large percentage where they hurt somebody else at the same time.
It's not uncommon to have significant intra-abdominal injuries where the guts are literally pulled loose over a long area. You just lose that part. Busted livers, busted spleens, caved in chest, inability to breathe, pneumonia, and plenty of head injuries too, because that head gets to bouncing around in there. And of course, that's the worst thing, that and spinal injuries, where people end up with spinal cord injuries.
We have homicide come in, and they review a lot of these cases. A lot of these are like manslaughter type cases. because of the drinking and driving, and not even drinking. Sometimes it can be prescription drugs. A lot of people tend to think that the prescription drugs are safer because they're coming from a pharmacy, and that's really not the case. They can be just as dangerous and just as intoxicating as the alcohol.
I've had too many cases where I've stopped somebody 16, 17 years old going 50, 60 miles an hour in the middle of the city, not thinking about not just themselves, but the other people that are, there's a lot of foot traffic in the city. And they themselves are not worried about thinking about if they get in a crash at 60 miles an hour in the middle of the city, what's going to happen to them, their car, their passengers in the car. I don't think that ever even comes through their head.
And it took me going to jail to see how lucky I am. To get to the point where I answer every phone call now from my mom or my dad, and always tell them where I am, where I'm going, and that I love them.
Let's say a young person, maybe going to college, maybe wanting to go to college, and they go out and they party a little bit too hard and they get on the road when they shouldn't. And then they're arrested by an officer. While in the big picture, it may be the least of their problems, because the good news is they get to go home and they haven't hurt anybody. But there still can be some really serious consequences, not the least of which is having to spend a night in jail, having to make that phone call to mom and dad, or your girlfriend or boyfriend saying, hey, I'm in jail. That's not a pleasant experience. You'd have to post a bond, then you have to go forward with the DWI case and get a defense attorney. And you miss work to do that, and you have to show up, and it's embarrassing. And all those things really are very small in the bigger sense. But at the point where you're trying to get a job a few years down the road, and now you can't get the job you want, or you're trying to get into a graduate school, and the graduate program says, no, thank you. You made this really terrible decision a number of years ago. We don't think that you're a good bet for our graduate program. Or even some of the professional certifications. Sometimes it's something you're going to be called to answer if you're trying to get a law license or a medical license. There are some really serious long-term consequences that can be there for somebody who does get a DWI and is convicted of it.
Just by getting convicted of DWI, you lose out on so many opportunities, and just how it affects, I guess, your financial situations as far as employment goes, or looking for degrees in different things, and just everything like that. And it's kind of scary to think that this one thing can impact the whole rest of your life.
Getting rejected upon just looking for employment, and it being a never-ending roadblock.
You can't get federal financial aid if you have DWI on your record. So if you're applying for college, you won't be able to get the financial aid to be able to go.
That is a permanent criminal record that stays with them for the rest of their life. A conviction for driving while intoxicated never goes away.
My promising future, college athlete, getting great grades in school. It feels like it's all for nothing right now because I can barely provide for my kids.
I guess I didn't realize before how selfish and ignorant it is, because you're not only jeopardizing your own life, but there's somebody else that could be completely fine and innocent, not have done anything, and because you made a stupid decision, you could potentially ruin another person's life.
Deciding to drink is one thing because that's affecting yourself, and that's kind of an individual choice, and so many people do it that it's hard to say don't drink, you can never underage drink. But then when you get behind the wheel and you're intoxicated, that's a completely different thing because you're affecting so many people around you, and there's so many other people on the roads, and just so many lives are at stake when you drink and drive.
A lot of kids are like, oh, well, you drink, you drive. Maybe you'll get in a little fender bender, but it won't be any big of a deal. You'll pay a little bit of money. It's whatever. They don't realize that you can really kill people and hurt yourself, hurt other people, hurt people you don't even know. Or you could hurt somebody that your best friend. And you could do a lot of things that are just really, really, really bad. And it would be with you for the rest of your life.
I had everything in my world, and I had amazing parents and family, and I had my whole life in front of me, and Danny had her whole life ahead of her. She was like smart and amazing and the center of everyone's world. Like, everyone loved her, and so I took her promising future and all the opportunities that she was gonna have away from her and for me, and just I didn't even start to see the light at the end of the tunnel until I had my kids, because I just wanted to, after everything happened, I wanted to make it go away, and I didn't want to be here anymore.
You might kill your friends or kill yourself, or an innocent person.
I'm not glad for what happened, but I'm extremely blessed in the sense that nobody else got hurt. I didn't have my lights on, but it really was a wake up in the sense that there's so many, it's just such a selfish act.
Most people know the real effects and the consequences for drinking and driving, but they only know the consequences for the price that you pay. Say you have to pay money for probation or pay for fixing a car or fixing something like that, but you can't fix someone's heart if you kill their daughter or kill their son, or just even if you didn't know them, that's still someone's son or daughter, brother or sister.
The depth of pain is just truly unimaginable, and it's very, very hard to see and to know that there's no real comfort for them. It's a pain that they will always have. And some of the most memorable moments have been, or statements have come from parents talking about the loss of their child. There was a mom who I think explained it extremely poignantly in saying, I didn't just lose my 26-year-old daughter. I lost my daughter every step of the way. I lost the toddler. I lost the kid who was going to kindergarten for the first day. I lost the kid who was graduating from high school. And every single step. And I think it's a very accurate description of the type of pain that a parent goes through when they get that phone call in the middle of the night and realize what's happened. We had another father who explained why it was important to him that he actually be a pallbearer at his daughter's funeral. And his explanation was, I never got a chance to walk her down the aisle. So this was his way of walking his daughter down the aisle. And to imagine what a father has to think about with that is just very difficult.
When they were telling us at the hospital about the procedures that they go through when there is a fatality and stuff like that, really got my attention because of the fact that I knew someone who did go through that procedure. I know someone's family who did sit in that room, and the doctors went in there and told them that their child did not make it. And the thought that that could have been me, that could be my brother, my sister, my parents, and it really opened my eyes because it's happening all around us, everybody, everywhere. It just, and maybe like you don't necessarily die in the accident yourself, but you took someone else's life, someone your age who has a family, who has people that love them, and because of your one decision to get behind the wheel, just trying to have a good time, just you're not really caring, you're just trying to get home, and you always get home, so you never think anything's gonna happen. But then something does happen, and it'll change your life forever.
Seeing the type of consequences that other innocent people have to pay for the horrible decision that this one person made, unthinking and uncaring. Yes, as prosecutors, we get very angry about it because it's so pointless.
It's probably the hardest part, because a lot of times you just want to cry, and you can't. You know, you have to go out there and you have to work it, and you have to gather the evidence, and you have to put the information together. So there's a lot of days on the way home you really kind of question what you're doing, and you know, is this paying off? Is it really working?
They need to just ball up and learn how to call someone or call your mom, even though she might be mad at you at that moment or something like that. She's going to be glad that you called, because she's not going to get a call from a police officer saying that your son is dead from drinking and driving.
But I would just hope that if they make that decision to have a drink, that driving is never on their mind at all.
I mean, the first thing that came to mind was be careful, but you can't really say that because, you know, that just goes back to them thinking it won't happen to me. You know, you have to let them know that it's not okay to drink and drive, period. You know, it's like he said, we can't tell them not to drink. We can't tell them that, you know, drinking's bad, don't drink. You got to tell them, don't get behind the wheel if you have been drinking, because that's when it takes effect on someone else's life. That's whenever you can influence someone else's life.
Use common sense. Be smart. You know, I mean, you know, we want kids to see this, and we want kids to pay attention to it, and we don't want the message to be, you're a bunch of bad kids and we have to correct everything you're doing, because that's not the message.
Why should you have to wait for a tragedy to happen to you? Why should you have to wait for you to be in that accident and end up losing your own life? Like, the people are telling you right now not to do it, and now you know, and you don't have the excuse as to, well, I didn't realize how big of a deal it was, because you do right now. You do realize how big of a deal it is, and just why wait for something bad to happen when you can save your own life right now by deciding not to get behind the wheel?
The biggest thing truly is that everybody needs to make their arrangements before they start drinking. If you rely on, we'll figure it out once we get there, we'll figure it out after we've been drinking a few hours, you've already lost the battle. Because by that time, nobody's in a position to really be assessing whether or not they should be behind the wheel of a car. You really have lost the battle at that point. And so I think the biggest thing for everybody, you know, let's put aside the conversation of underage drinking at all. The point is that at the point where that's going to be happening, there is going to be drinking, there needs to be some safe arrangements for how you're going to get home. And that needs to happen before any of that drinking starts.
You're going to eventually get caught, whether it's your first, your third, your 5,000th time. You'll eventually get caught. And hopefully it'll be for something like driving with your lights off, rather than having killed a stranger or your best friend.
You know, not all kids go out and do these things. Not all kids are going out and drinking and then driving afterward. So we want to get this message out, and we want the kids to see it, and we want them to hear it and take it in and listen to it. So if this film, by doing this and going through everything that you guys have gone through and that we've gone through, if it saves one kid, it's worthwhile. If it saves 2 or 3 or 20, everything's a bonus.
Think about whoever your friends are, or your best friend, or your sister, or even an acquaintance, or maybe even, I don't know, like just think about one person and that's in your life, and then think about them not being in your life because of what you did and your actions, your terrible decisions, and your recklessness. And then think about that person not being in this world and everybody it affects. because one person out of this world might not sound like a lot, but it's that one person is somebody's whole world. Like, my kids are my whole world. Danny's mom, for Danny's mom, Danny was her whole world, and I took her whole world away from her. So think about who you're taking away from the world when you drink and drive.
Don't give in. So don't give in. We got a choice, so be the voice that stands up. This happens way too much. It is time to realize we only got one life to live. We got a choice, so be the voice that stands up. This happens way too much. It is time to realize we only got one life to live. So don't give in. So don't